What's up, Canes fans? Peter Ariz here bringing you today's edition of CanesInSight Daily. We are going behind enemy lines today. Wake Forest week, obviously a huge game for Miami to wrap up this season. Syracuse next week, but cannot look ahead. Wake Forest this week, senior day for Miami. Last chance to go see Cam Ward and a lot of these great Canes. We just got to know them. A lot of these guys have been here for 1 year, but celebrate them and the great season that they have had. Obviously, a lot to come, hopefully, for this team, but got to take care of business this weekend. So Cam Lemons from Demon Deacons Digest 247 Sports will be joining us today. Did a great job breaking down this matchup from Wake Forest perspective. He did his research on Miami as well, so I think he has a really good idea of how this game could shape up. Of course, no one's been an easy matchup for Miami in the ACC, so it could be very interesting this Saturday at Hard Rock Stadium. Wanted to mention, as always, this episode is brought to you by Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. Take back control of your life with the law offices of Anajar and Levine. Call 1-800-747-3733, 1-800-747-FREE. Again, take back control of your life with Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. And also, before Cam Lemons joins us, wanted to mention this awesome event at Miami Hurricane Team Store, of course, right across from campus next to the Thesis Hotel. Holiday photos with Sebastian this Sunday, November 24th, 2 to 4 p.m. Save the date. It's the second annual event here with Sebastian Claus. Again, November 24th, this Sunday, 2 to 4 p.m. You get a free photo. Obviously, bring the kids out there with any purchase of $25 and 20% off savings at the store Sunday. Again, the Miami Hurricane Team Store. Great event. Holiday photos with Sebastian. Hopefully, you guys make it out there, bring the kids, and have a great time and get those savings. So coming up next here on the CanesInSight Daily Podcast, Cam Lemons of Demon Deacons Digest. All right, joining us now on the CanesInSight Podcast, as we do every week, going behind enemy lines. And this week, Miami, Wake Forest, we have Cam Lemons joining us today. Really appreciate you joining us today, Cam. As I pull up your Twitter page here, and all the Canes fans out there looking for Wake Forest info this week, you can go follow Cam. Big one this week, senior day for Miami. And here's his page. Again, go follow him, Cam Lemons _ Demon Deacon Digest with 247 Sports. Cam, appreciate you joining us today. How you doing?
Good. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course, man. Look, this is obviously a big game for Miami in this playoff hunt, trying to finish off the season strong and get into this ACC championship game. Hasn't been a great season for Wake Forest, but at the end of the day, pretty much any offense Miami's gone up against this year has had success. So excited to break down this matchup with you today. And I just want to start with Dave Clawson, right? One of the longest tenured coaches in college football. I mean, that says a lot in today's day and age, right, to have that sort of stability, at the program. Has had some really good seasons there. 4 wins last year, right now 4-6. So how would you kind of describe the feeling around the program right now? Again, Coach Clawson's been there for 9-10 years now. So, I mean, he's been there for a while, but I mean, what's the mood of the program right now?
Yeah. So, I mean, Clawson's been there for 10 years. His first year was actually my freshman year at Wake Forest. So it's been kind of fun watching that sort of build from the program we saw in 2014, where they couldn't snap the ball correctly and line up correctly, to 2021, where they eventually made it to an ACC title game, to the last couple of years where they've really kind of struggled to get back to a bowl game. I think there's a lot of feeling that this current era of college football has really hurt Wake Forest. Wake Forest thrived on being an older team. They thrived on being the guys that, your first and second year, you'll redshirt, you'll maybe play a couple games your second year. Year 3, you'll be better, but year 4, year 5, you're really going to be a talented player. Now, in this kind of era, it is what it is. Guys going their 4th or 5th years, don't usually stay around, especially at a place like Wake Forest, where I know people always kind of gripe, like, we actually go to school. Place like Wake Forest, you got to go to school. It is what it is. There's certain places like that. That's just the land. So you couple that with, NIL, Wake Forest, they're the smallest Power 4 school in the country. I see stuff like Indiana this past weekend raised over $1 million by just their fans alone in NIL. And I'm like, well, Indiana's one of the largest fan bases in the country. Wake Forest, I think last year graduated about, a few thousand people. Like there were maybe only 7,000 like total graduates, like students at Wake Forest. And so it's been a tough era. And you've had some inconsistent play. Last year, it was definitely, everything went wrong at one time. Your quarterback evaluation went terribly. Offensive line was awful. Wide receivers weren't great. The defense kind of fell apart at the end of the year. This year, I think from a fan perspective, it feels like the same sort of thing, even though the team is markedly, I think better. I think if this year's Wake Forest team plays last year's Wake Forest team, this year's team wins by about 3 scores. And, it doesn't really show up in the win-loss record a lot of times because, there's just one little mistake here or there. And it's not just young guys, it's old guys too. You have the Virginia game where Wake's driving down the field to probably win the game, and a 5th-year senior fumbles the ball, and a 6th-year senior, instead of just falling on it, tries to pick it up and run and doesn't get the football. You have a game like last week against UNC where, the yards kind of stacked up on them defensively, but they were still in the game. They had turnovers, and their starting quarterback goes out. You have a 5th-year senior give up on a route and just what would have been a touchdown, but instead kind of falls incomplete. You have, a guy who's been in your program at quarterback throw a pick 6 and throw a ball to a wide receiver that he probably shouldn't have. It's just these little mistakes here and there that just have added up, which is why they've played 6 one-score games this year. And granted, they've won 3 of them, but when you're in a place like Wake where the margin of error is just razor thin, those things adding up won't win you a lot of football games.
Everybody always thinks of the slow mesh with Wake Forest, obviously. Those of us who see it, maybe once a year on TV or every couple of years when our teams play Wake Forest, it's one thing, but you see it every single week. Explain to those who just only have a surface level understanding of the slow mesh. What is the slow mesh, and what are some of the strengths and weaknesses of running that system week in, week out?
Right. So one thing that I'm going to preface with is if you're watching it from at home, you're going to hear the word slow mesh a lot, and it's not going to be a slow mesh. The slow mesh in itself is just an RPO. It's an elongated RPO. The quarterback's putting the ball in the running back's hands, and they're going to kind of elongate. They're going to walk probably 2 or 3 steps up to the line of scrimmage because they're really trying to bring either a linebacker or a safety down into the box and try to make a decision. Are you going to give us a run box, or are you going to give us a pass box? With that, Wake Forest probably only runs it maybe 15 to 20% of the time anyways, because one of the big weaknesses of the slow mesh is if you can blow up the A-gap, play's dead, because that's where the running back is more than likely going to have to go if it's going to be elongated. And that's kind of why I get always weirded out. People are like, oh, they're always running slow mesh. And it's like, no, it's just an RPO. If the running back's going to the outside, I don't know a running back that can make that cut. But regardless, that's I think a way that Miami's probably going to be able to try to attack it with a guy like Messidor, Simeon Barrow. Maybe if Barron kind of stunts inside, that's where I think Miami's going to try to say, hey, if you're going to run this, we've got some guys up front, Ruben Bain, and obviously, we've got some guys that can do this. But the entire point of this is to try to put the linebackers and maybe a safety in just purgatory of, I don't really know where I'm supposed to go here. Am I supposed to come out and get Damon Claymore, or do I need to kind of be a rat and fall back? And so I think that's one of the biggest strengths is when I don't know if the linebacker play across college football is exactly perfect. I don't think linebacker playing in pro football is perfect. And so if you're trying to attack a linebacker and put them in purgatory, I think that's one of the biggest strengths for Wake Forest and running the slow mesh is it kind of evens the playing field because, athleticism is what it is. But if you're stuck in processing mode, it's really hard for your brain to do one thing, your body to do another.
I think Canes fans would tell you that the linebackers and safeties have been in purgatory all season long, regardless of the offense that's being run. But, you mentioned that experience has kind of been a calling card of the program. One position that they definitely have that in is quarterback, Hank Bachmeier. He's been around 25 years old, I believe. Obviously started his career at Boise State, then was at Louisiana Tech. How would you describe his play this year? Obviously, he got hurt last week, but it looks like he'll be good to go this week. So for people who haven't had a chance to watch him, I mean, look, you've had plenty of opportunities to watch him, but if you haven't seen him play, tell the Canes fans what to expect from him.
I think Hank is honestly, it's always you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I think Hank has kind of evolved as he's been at Wake Forest, which is really, really big. I think the big thing for him is he's used his legs a lot more this season than he has in any of his seasons at Boise State or Louisiana Tech. And it's really added a dimension to him. He loves kind of forcing these tight window throws, and it really kind of costs him against Cal because they're trying to drive down the field, and it's a throw I've seen during fall camp of it's a vertical concept, the hook underneath. A linebacker just kind of playing right there, and he wants to force that throw. I think that's probably one of his biggest weaknesses, but I think one of his biggest strong suits is the fact that he's getting the ball. He can get the ball out really quickly. There are a couple of times here and there where he'll hold on to it too long, but he's someone that's, hey, we're going to make these decisive throws. It's 5 yards here, 8 yards here, 12 yards here. We're really going to do it. He's a very decisive guy, and he's not afraid to take a hit. He's what I think about 6'1", 6'2", 205. He's a bit of a bulkier guy. And so he's not afraid to say, you know what, I need to get it. It's a great play from the NC State game where it's 4th, I think 15, and he just takes off, kind of takes a hit and just keeps on trucking moving. And so I think it's been an added element of toughness and trust that these guys have in him because he has been around the block. And no, I don't think he's a perfect quarterback. If he was a perfect quarterback, he wouldn't be on his 3rd school in 6 years. That's just kind of is what it is. But I think he's been a solid average ACC quarterback. I think PFF has him in the top 20, 25 quarterbacks in the country. QBR, I think he's kind of top 50, top 60 around there. And I think that's about where he is. He's an average ACC quarterback, and it started getting Wake Forest back to a point where last year you couldn't think if Wake Forest would score 14 points. Now they're scoring about just under 30 points, and it's like, okay, we're getting back to a sense of normalcy because he's someone that can make these decisive throws.
In terms of the identity of Wake Forest this year, forgetting the slow mesh and just the philosophical stuff, just the identity of this team, whether it's a personnel group that is particularly strong or experienced. When you're preparing for Wake Forest, who do you have to worry about on Wake Forest?
On offense, it's Damon Claiborne. It starts and ends with Damon. This is easily the best running back that has come through Wake Forest in a very long time. I know they had Kenneth Walker III when they were transferring to Michigan State, but every time you watch Damon, it's contact and then there's just 6 yards, or there's no contact and there's 20 yards. He's a really special back. He's really made some improvements in the pass protection as well. He's been not afraid of concept, and then now they've started doing a lot of stuff where Wake's playing a lot more of 5 wide. They're trusting in their protection a little more. And so if you're in Miami, someone's like, they're worried about their linebackers. I don't know how much you would love to have, a 5'10", 200-pound guy that can go out wide and catch passes. And I think on offense, they really are saying, hey, let's get him 25, 30 touches, however that may come. And I think on defense, it's up front. I think Omarion Hampton obviously gashed them for about, I think, 270 last week. But while the yardage wasn't great, down to down, they really held UNC to not a ton. And a lot of that was because up front, they've really ratcheted up their pressure numbers. Rasheen Davis has started having the year we thought we would have. Kevin Pointer is really starting to having the year we thought he would have. A guy like Zach Lovichin as a walk-on is starting to get pressure no matter who the competition is. And so I think they've kind of evolved less into a pass-happy offense and more of a let's run the ball down people's throats and let's try to see how much pressure we can get on defense.
Yeah, just looking at the numbers, I mean, look, it hasn't been, like you said, scoring about 30 points a game, but the numbers just statistically aren't great.
Right.
Offensively. Would you say that they've kind of picked things up here the last couple of weeks, though?
I think so. I think it's been kind of a twofold thing of who they've played and how they've played. You open the season and you score 30 points against Virginia. I think there's no slouch on that. And then you get Ole Miss, and I mean, the quiet part about that Ole Miss game was they got past the Ole Miss 40 more than a few times. They just couldn't. They thought they needed touchdowns, which I would agree with, and couldn't get into the end zone. So instead of you kicking a bunch of field goals, only up 6 points. Scored 38 against Louisiana. Fine, 34 on NC State, and then after the Clemson game where they only put up 14, you're like, I don't know where this offense is. But then you look at Cal, and it's like Cal's defense is really good, and they threw up 36 on them, like pretty easily. And then last week against UNC, I thought they moved the ball pretty well. It's just a penalty here, a penalty there, and I think that's kind of the big thing of. I think the last few games they've really felt a little bit more comfortable moving the ball down the field. It's an illegal man downfield. It's a 60-year senior left tackle getting a false start. It's those little things have been kind of the barrier between them being a 20 to 30, like a 25 to 30 point game and a 35 to 40 point game kind of team.
Cam, hearing you discuss the front, I could tell you've done research on Miami's personnel. From the Wake Forest standpoint, what matchup or what are you most worried about when it comes to University of Miami going against Wake?
I think it's the matchup of Barrow and Messidor versus guys like our center, the Wake center, Luke Pettibone, and either Matt Golden or Nick Sharp or George Sell. They like to rotate 3 guards in for 2 spots just to keep guys fresh. That's going to be important. I think Wake Forest feels like they're going to trust Devontae Gordon against the Ruben Bain. I think that's going to be a really fun matchup of 2 guys that are draft worthy prospects. But I think up the middle, the A gap is really going to be the important part of, is Wake going to be able to run the ball? Because I don't think this is going to be a game where Wake feels like we need to put up 50 points to win. I think Wake's going to probably need to shorten this game a little bit. But the only way we're going to be able to shorten this game is if Barrow isn't just locking out Pettibone and just destroying whatever gap you have there. I think you have to be able to. I don't think you need to control the line of scrimmage, but you can't just outright lose at the line of scrimmage.
Now, switching over to the other side of the ball, we've been talking a lot about Wake's offense, but defensively, it hasn't necessarily been a pretty story by the numbers there either. I mean, what's been the biggest issue on that side of the ball? I mean, listen, it might be tough to pinpoint because us as Miami guys, we've been trying to figure out the defensive issues all year, and it's very tough to point at one thing. So it's usually a multitude of issues when you have those sort of struggles. But talk to us about that side of the football.
I think there's been a multitude, but the big thing has just been health and inconsistent play at cornerback. They started the season. So before the season, actually, they had Deshaun Jones and Jamari Glasgow. And Deshaun Jones actually ended up transferring out to Alabama. And so it was one of their starters during the spring portal window just went. And they're just like, okay, well, that's just, if you lose someone during the spring portal window, it's a really hard time to replace someone. They end up going out and getting a guy in Jackson Mole from Purdue and Sedarius Kelly he was at a D2 school. And so you get through fall camp, and CD, who started playing some really good ball during fall camp, ends up getting banged up during fall camp. And so now all of a sudden you've got in Capone Blue, a 5th-year guy from Kent State, alongside Jamari Glasgow, who's never really started ever at an ACC level. And so the first few games there would always be 2 to 3 plays where a transfer. It would be whether it was CD, whether it was Capone, whether it was Jackson Mole, there was just a coverage bust. You could count on it like clockwork. There was a coverage bust, 45, 50 yards, maybe even a touchdown there. And it's just, and it'd be simple stuff. It'd be they were playing cover 3. Someone thinks they're passing something off. Nope, someone's behind there. Oh, someone's motioning across the line of scrimmage. I don't need one corner from the other side coming across. We can just pass this off. Nope, guys just going across for the end zone. And that sort of inconsistency has been, at the beginning of the year, was really tough. The last few weeks, the injuries have really piled up. Jamari Glasgow going to the Stanford game right before they had the bye, actually ended up being sick. He got a fever. Got a fever in football, can't play. That's one of the most dangerous things you can do. But then he picked up a ankle injury, so he's missed the last couple of games. Everything we've been told this week is that he's quote unquote 95% to play. Capone Blue, who was playing some solid snaps here and there, actually ended up having to medically retire after the UConn game, suffered an upper body injury during that game, and is no longer going to be able to play football. Sedarius Kelly has been, he's been playing better and better football, but he's had an injury here. And then against Clemson, he lands weirdly and is out for a couple of games. And then, he comes back and is really trying to ramp up. So he's been in and out. And so now you've really been having to deal with essentially Jackson Mole, who was a former walk-on at Purdue, Zamari Stevenson, who I like the guy, but he was playing nickel for them a couple months ago, and nickel went out like corner, are just 2 wildly different things to play. And now you're just kind of flailing. And it's like, okay, we have nothing at corner. We might as well have to just play 8 yards back and hope for the best.
Yeah, looking at the numbers, I mean, they're ranked 130th in the country in pass defense, averaging 281 yards allowed per game through the air. So, I mean, look, obviously Miami has the passing attack with Cam Ward. That should be, if you're Miami, you'd feel pretty good about that matchup, I'd think.
Cam, I was scrolling through the roster here. I saw some familiar names. I saw Micah Mays, someone Miami recruited at wide receiver. I know you have a lot of wide receivers who are productive. So what's this wide receiver group for Wake Forest look like?
So Micah's actually been the beneficiary of some injuries. So Donovan Green missed a healthy amount of time this year with a hamstring injury, which really forced Micah into a starting role. I don't know if anyone really pegged Micah to be a starter this year, but he has a bevy of talent. He's just learning how to be a receiver. And I think you've seen the ups and downs with him. You've seen some ups where he can go up and make some plays and win some jump balls. And then you'll see some downs where against UNC, he has, they're lined up in an unbalanced formation and he takes a step back and it's like, why are you doing that? It's a legal formation now. But it's also, this is your first year really starting. So he's been coming along. The wide receiver group has been good, not great, which is kind of weird for Wake Forest, given the last few years they've been really, really good at wide receiver. You've got in the slot, Taylor Marin and Deuce Alexander. Those two guys have been really just kind of eating up yards against no matter the competition. I think a really interesting game is going to be how Wake Forest tries to attack the corners, especially with a guy like Horatio Fields, who didn't have the best game last week. But if he can find a true freshman, I think maybe some experience, some size there. He's been a bigger body guy. He's gone up for some big highlight catches. Can he win there?
Yep, it's funny. That's from the Miami perspective, we've been hoping to have the true freshman matched up against the best guys and protect some of the other guys lately because he's been playing so well. But as watching true freshmen, especially against wide receivers that are crafty and know what to do, they can get exposed, and all it takes is one big play to really turn one of these games. So, Cam, big picture, just obviously 20-point plus underdog here against Miami, but this is a team that's been playing close pretty much every single game all year. From a Wake Forest perspective, what are you looking? What are the goals aside from obviously you want to win the game and everything else, but just what do you want to see out there from Wake Forest against Miami?
I think on offense, it's just not shooting yourselves in the foot. Down the down, Wake Forest offense has been pretty good. The explosive plays haven't really been there, but they've been really good at eating up 6 yards, 7 yards, 12 yards, whether it's either the run or the pass. And then they will get to the 30-yard line, the 25-yard line. That's a false start. It's an illegal man downfield. It's an illegal snap. It's a face mask on the offense. It's something that you'll never expect. It's a turnover. I think, whether or not you win this game, you can't have another game where you're shooting yourselves in the foot. And I think, if you want to win it, you can't have a game where you're turning the ball over 3 or 4 times. I think on defense, it's getting pressure and tackling. Cam Ward's a Houdini artist. There are going to be some broken tackles. There are going to be some plays where Brad Lambert, defense coordinator, is just going to want to throw a tablet at the window because Cam Ward did some stuff that you just don't expect. But you've got to be able to limit the damage. You're not going to get out of this game with Miami only scoring 14, 21 points. That's just not going to happen. But can you stop yourself from saying, hey, we gave up that 50-yard coverage bus. Oh, we thought we had Cam Ward dead at rights, and he comes out of there with a 40-yard touchdown. You got to be able to limit those plays as much as possible.
D, you got anything else for Cam? This has been great stuff, man, and you could tell he did his research on the Miami side too. But yeah, man, great stuff from you, Cam. And again, Canes fans, go check out his work on Demon Deacon Digest on 247 Sports, and we'll see what happens this weekend, man. Like I said, it's been you talked about there's been a lack of explosive plays. Miami's defense has the propensity to allow those explosive plays. So, hopefully Canes fans, that's not the case this weekend, but should be a nice test for Miami coming off this bye. And again, like you said, they don't run the slow mesh every play, but having that added element in there, it should be something very interesting for Miami's defense to have to cover. So we'll see what happens this weekend at Hard Rock against Senior Day for Miami. So should be a fun one, man. Cam Lemons, appreciate your time today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
This an insight to the Canes, and we ain't playing no games. Joaquin said dominate, so that's what we do. Home of the legends and 7th floor crew. Down in Miami where hurricanes brew. You here for the rumors, we bring you the news. Cause it's all about the you, and nobody do it like CanesInSight. Nobody